Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and as always told, I had a voice radio. So today, it is time to look at some more Ultra Prism cards. We've looked at a bunch of cards from the upcoming set, Ultra Prism, but ladies and gentlemen, this is going to keep happening, and it's going to accelerate just a little bit, maybe, because, well, the set's coming out in Japan, like the end of next week. So there are more cards to reveal. How many more new cards, how many good new cards, will of course determine how many new videos. Today, we are looking at Spiritomb. Spiritomb has a history of really interesting cards, none more interesting than the ridiculous one that was released in the Arceus set, and both gave, well, a Vileplume-like effect in terms of blocking item cards, and had the same attack as Diancie that allowed you to evolve Pokemon from your deck. But this, ladies and gentlemen, is a different kind of Spiritomb, but it might just have a couple of attacks that make it good. Now, if we look at the basics here, 70 HP is small, but not, to be honest, that different from what we would expect from a Spiritomb. Retreat cost of 1 is nice because all the attacks are for a single energy, and they're both for colourless energy, which is important because it means it can then be teched into any deck whatsoever. No weakness and no resistance is nice and about normal. Lack of weakness is good. We expect this from Ghost Pokemon now and again. Having said that, doesn't really matter because, you know, it's got 70 HP. That's nothing to get particularly excited about. Now, this was revealed and translated over at Pokebeach.com. Both the attacks are pretty good. The first attack here, single colourless energy. Search your discard pile for 2 supporter cards, show them to your opponent, and put them into your hand. I suppose we should mention here that if you're in the expanded format, you can actually use Dimension Valley here, which would mean you can use these attacks for 0 energy. Dimension Valley is a really good card that is taking over the expanded format, or, you know, was until Zoroark came along and proved to be potentially even better. But something to bear in mind if you don't feel like paying the single energy cost for this. So, this is useful. Ever since Versus Seeker rotated, we have not had a great way to recover our supporter cards. Now, we've got Lusamine at the moment. Lusamine is fine, but Lusamine is your supporter for the turn. You get to take 2 Stadium or supporter, or one of each, put them back into your hand, and you know what? This is fine, but then you're using Lusamine as your supporter for the turn, so you can have another supporter the following turn. It's far from ideal. Having said that, do we really want to use an attack that does the same thing, which will of course be our attack for the turn? And the answer is maybe. We've got plenty of Pokemon at the moment that have these kind of attacks. Gardevoir GX takes 10 cards from your discard, puts them back into your deck. That is the GX attack. Decidueye GX does a very similar thing, except it's to your hand, and it's only 3 cards, and if you've played as many games of the Pokemon trading card game as I have, you will know that an awful lot of the time, your opponent will be taking at least 1, if not 2 or 3 supporter cards with Hollow Hunt. And these are GX attacks. These are your super powerful once per game GX attacks that are being used to recover supporter cards. So you know what? Why could we not have that with just a basic 0 or 1 energy attack? And the other thing is that Spiritomb is a single prize Pokemon. So what you can do here is you can play what we call the 7 prize game. Your opponent has knocked out 1 GX, therefore they have 4 prizes left to take. You use a Spiritomb, they knock out Spiritomb, they've got 3 prizes left to take. But if you've only got GXs on the field, they've still got to KO 2 GXs to win the game, and therefore, them KOing Spiritomb hasn't really got them any further towards winning. Plus, if your opponent takes an inopportune prize and goes ahead on prizes, you've got access to both Counter Energy, 2 of any energy when attached to a non-EX, non-GX and you're behind on prizes, and Counter Catcher, a Lysander in an item form. So actually, going behind on prizes can be good. And if you force your opponent into a 7 prize game, you can actually really take advantage of that by using N, and then in the late game you're ending them to 1 card rather than 2. Although, speaking of N, we should mention that it's all well and good, taking Guzma from the discard pile and putting it into your hand, but actually, if your opponent plays an N, well, it's not in your hand anymore, ready to go. Having said that, let's be clear about this. It's still really useful. They're still in your deck, available to use, rather than in your discard, not available for the rest of the game. And given that most decks at the moment are playing something like Zoroark or Octillery, which allows them to draw using Pokemon before they use their supporter, it's really not the worst thing in the world. And N will not destroy this particular attack, ladies and gentlemen. It's kind of annoying, but it's not the end of the world. Now, in terms of supporters to get back, you've got the old favourites like Professor Sycamore, but really, this is particularly good for cards like Ace Roller and Guzma. Guzma is a card that wins games. There's many a game where we're sitting there going, if I get Guzma, I win the game, or I hope my opponent doesn't get Guzma because otherwise they win the game. This happens a lot at the moment. And if you can use a Spiritomb to get 2 supporters back, that gives you a leg up. That gives you an advantage. And that is good. Similarly here, we've got Ace Roller, which is used in a lot of decks, Golisopod being the one that really springs to mind. And it's very simple. You heal. You've got 210 HP. If your opponent doesn't KO you, you get to heal up. That's lovely, because then your opponent is going to struggle to take more prizes, and you're going to be sitting there laughing, and it's going to be lovely. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Ace Roller is good, but you can only play 4 of them. This is a way to recover. Is anyone going to use this for this reason? The answer is, I don't know. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But I'm saying that with Versus Seeker gone, we still want to recover supporters. This is one of the better options we've got. I suppose it really comes down to, would you rather waste your supporter getting supporters back, or would you rather waste your attack getting supporters back? But the second attack here is also incredibly useful on Spiritomb. 10 damage, not good. During your opponent's next turn, the basic Pokemon hit by this attack cannot attack. It's basically Flash Ray. Now, it's not exactly Flash Ray, that is Jolteon EX's attack. Jolteon EX's, firstly, does significantly more damage, but Jolteon basically says, and by basically I mean exactly, during your opponent's next turn, prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by basic Pokemon. Now, Spiritomb is a little more restrictive. Jolteon prevents all basics from hitting Jolteon. Spiritomb stops a basic attacking. So, even if Spiritomb's not in the active, then that basic cannot attack. Couple of problems here. Firstly, the switching card we're using most at the moment is Guzma, which will not only hit the bench, but will also cause a switch. But also, basic Pokemon aren't that great at the moment. Drampa sees a fair amount of play, but Drampa sees play with Garbodor, which is an evolved, which is fine. It can hit. Volcanion is about the one here. Volcanion really is a deck that revolves around basic Pokemon. Maybe you can hurt that with Spiritomb, but it's not quite as good. Jolteon gets immunity from basics. Spiritomb stops a specific basic attacking. As a side note, on a ruling query, a Pokemon that goes to the bench and then comes active again is treated as a different Pokemon. So if your opponent, just switches and then retreats to the same Pokemon, that will be good enough. It's essentially a different Pokemon in the active. One of the biggest problems we've got here is kind of like we saw with Chimecho from Shining Legends. Great in theory, but it does 10 damage. Or Jirachi from Shining Legends. Good in theory, but it does 10 damage. And this is the problem. It doesn't do enough damage. You add a choice band on here and you're doing a lovely 40 to an EX or a GX. You add a Professor Kukui here, you're doing 60 to an EX or a GX, 30 to a non-EX, non-GX. You are hitting for weakness being a psychic type against stuff like Garbodor and Espeon, but it's just not very much damage. I don't see Spiritomb's second attack as an I'm locking you out the game attack. I see Spiritomb's second attack as I'm going to buy myself a turn or two to get set up. Jolteon could win games. But with the low damage output here, I don't think Spiritomb does any more than buy you a turn. But when combined with that really good first attack, I'm calling it a free Wossie card. It's not an amazing game-breaking card that everybody is going to put in every deck immediately. What it is a very interesting card, which can get supporters back and buy you turns against basic decks. That means it's an interesting card that should go in your binder so you can tech it into decks later on. That means it's a free Wossie card. But as always, I want to know what you think about this card. Let me know in the comment section. Do you think it's going to see a lot of play? What uses do you see for it? Go nuts! Be nice. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at the Wossie, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, etc., you can do so by going to patreon.com/PTCGRadio. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.